Hey everyone, I'm Jeff McErlain, and today I want to talk about 5 quick, easy practice tips to help you improve your playing. Before we start going, please like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. It really helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithms. Also, please check out JM Guitar Lessons, and over there you can get my background tracks, you can get my guitar reference guide, which is really helpful for your practicing. All sorts of courses that I have available, master classes on solo electric blues guitar, making the chord changes on a blues, building blocks of blues rhythm guitar, building blocks of blues guitar soloing. Practice tip number 1, plan your practice session before you pick up the instrument. What I mean by that is, if sometimes you just pick up the guitar and you start noodling and you end up playing the same thing you've been playing for 20, 30 years and you don't seem to improve. That's a bad thing because that's just like a repeated habit. It's like a loop you're in. If you plan your practice session ahead of time, okay, so today I just want to work on triads. I've got an hour to practice today. Okay, I want to work on triads for at least 25 minutes. If you're really kind of diligent about that, it makes a huge difference. So plan what you want to practice ahead of time. Also plan on having fun, right? I want to jam on some tunes. I just want to noodle on the guitar. That's part of it, but for me the guitar is always in my hands. I'm always playing all day, but that doesn't mean I'm practicing all day. Practice is different from playing and noodling and sitting around. Noodling and sitting around and kind of jamming away, that's important as well, but nothing can replace that dedicated practice time. My big tip on that is to use a timer. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Practice one idea for 3 minutes. Right? So if I want to play major scales, put on the timer and practice my major scales for 3 minutes. If 3 minutes is too long, make it 1.5 minutes. Just a period of time where you're strictly working on one thing and you keep your mind from wandering, because 1 or 2 minutes, 3 minutes of concentrated practice time of one idea will make a huge, huge difference in your playing at a very short period of time. So rule number 1, plan your practice sessions and use a timer to use that time more efficiently. Practice tip number 2, work on repertoire. So what I mean by that is learn as many songs as you possibly can. Jazz musicians learn jazz standards. That's part of the standard jazz repertoire. They have to know that. Blues musicians must also know blues repertoire, so you need to know all the classic tunes and how to play them. They all have different riffs, and that's what differentiates one blues tune from another. If you're a big rock and blues rock or classic rock fan or any kind of music, you want to learn the repertoire of that genre. So if you're into classic rock, Creedence Clearwater Revival, you want to learn Stones tunes, you want to learn some Pink Floyd tunes, you want to learn some Zeppelin tunes. And when I say you want to learn tunes that everybody can jam on. If you learn how to play Stairway to Heaven, you're not going to get to usually just jam with a bunch of guys in Stairway to Heaven, but you can jam on something like rock and roll. Also, by learning repertoire, you're building up your confidence as a musician because you're building up your time, you're building up your feel, you're building technique by being able to play the song properly and play it as close to the recording as you can, because that requires skill. So if you're jamming along with AC/DC and Angus Young and Malcolm Young, to play it just right requires skill, and it's really not as easy as it may seem. Memorize the song, be able to play it by yourself. First play it along with the recording, and then try to play it without the recording so you know you can stand on your own 2 feet. Practice tip number 3, work on one thing at a time. With all these people like myself on the internet and all these great things that are available to us to learn music and learn guitar, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all these things that you want to work on. If you're like me, you can be a little all over the place. You want to learn how to play everything. And I found when I tried to turn off all the clutter, meaning like my phone, the TV, the computer, all these things, and concentrate on one thing, whether it's repertoire, I want to learn this one song today, or I want to learn this chord progression, or I want to learn these major scales, which brings us back to number 1, where you just plan the practice session and then you do it in timed increments. That will help you get a lot better more quickly. So something that might have taken you years to learn, like maybe your triad inversions, which are extremely important to do, but if you practice just that each day for 10 to 15 minutes, you will make huge headway as opposed to poking around and then going on YouTube and then trying to find something to work along with or play along with. That is a road to frustration, and it just never really worked for me. As soon as I kind of figured out, man, if I just practice one little idea, I get that together, that's the way to do it. Practice tip number 4 is to jam along with records. I feel like that's a lost art. People always jam with backing tracks, and that's cool, and that's a ton of fun. I'm totally into jamming with backing tracks, and I highly recommend you do it. But if you jam along, say, with a live record, I'm an old Eric Clapton fan, And jamming along with those live Cream records, I learned a lot about how to interact with the band, even though I'm not in the band, right? So if Clapton's soloing and he's playing against what Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker are playing, if I try to emulate it or get into the vibe of it or just play with it, I pick up on the phrasing that Clapton was using, or anybody, it's the Allman Brothers, or it's John Mayer or Joe Bonamassa. Play along with as many, I say live recordings especially if you can get them, because that's when people usually stretch out. You play along with those, you learn how these people are improvising, what they're playing, how they're phrasing, maybe they're not playing too much, how the band crescendos, and as the band is performing live, you kind of go along with them for the ride. If you're jamming with backing tracks, they're usually pretty monotone because there's no interaction with the band. So playing along with a record, especially a live record, is one of the best ways that you can emulate playing with the band at home. It's really useful, a really, really important skill, and I've learned a lot from it. For me, the heyday of the live record was the 70s, so all these great, 60s and 70s live records where bands would kind of go off and jam. Those are the ones I love to jam along with the most. Practice tip number 5, and that is to play with other people as much as you possibly can. As good as you get at home on the instrument, it is nothing like actually jamming with real people in real time, or performing if you can get to that. Nothing kicks your butt faster as a musician than to be on stage. And that's when, a lot of times, that's when you find out where your real deficiencies are. You can find out where your strengths are as well, but I usually end up figuring things out like, wow, I really need to work on that, because when you're on a gig, or even at a rehearsal, that's where what you really play like comes out. So jamming with other people is immensely important, hugely educational. And I also look at live gigs, say, compared to practice. Free practicing if you're like a fighter, which I'm not, but sparring is one thing, but actually getting into the ring and having a real fight is something completely different. Practice is very different than performing. So you need to practice performing by actually doing it. So that is a huge, huge thing for me. I love being on the road because over time I start to get more and more relaxed and more confident and more in fighting shape. So jamming with the people as much as you can. And also a little hint on that is try to play with people who are better than you, because they're going to push you forward. I'm always trying to get people in my band who I feel like are better than me, or who are going to push me to do something different and new. If I feel like I'm dragging everybody along, it's not a lot of fun. I don't feel like I improve, and I find it to be really, really frustrating. So the quick rundown. Plan your practice sessions. Use a timer during those practice sessions. Number 2, build up repertoire. Learn as many tunes as you possibly can. Number 3, practice one idea at a time. I guarantee you, you will improve. Practice tip number 4, jam with records, especially live records, because they are a ton of fun, and you start to learn how to interact with the band without actually having to be in the band, and you're playing with some of the best players around. And practice tip number 5, jam with other people. You have to practice performing. Try to perform as much as you possibly can. Try to jam with your friends as much as you possibly can. That's how you really, really make the big strides in your playing. Thanks for checking us out, everyone. If you like my channel, once again, please like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon.